Through Weight Loss by Hers, you can give yourself something to be excited about in 2025. You can spend the new year in control of your weight by losing up to an average of 9 pounds in your first month. This is based on data that real Hers customers have reported based on their personalized compounded GLP-1 treatment plans. Hers is transforming women's healthcare by providing access to affordable weight loss treatment plans, delivered straight to your door if prescribed. Hers offers a holistic weight loss program with personalized solutions, including compounded GLP-1 weekly injections, featuring the same active ingredient as Ozempic and Wegovy or oral medication kits. So if you've been struggling with your weight loss journey, it's time for you to find the best option that works for you through Hers. Start your initial free online visit today at forhers.com/KKC. That's forhers.com/KKC for your personalized weight loss treatment options. forhers.com/KKC. Hers weight loss is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions apply. Wegovy and Ozempic are not compounded. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased. Okay, you want to look luxurious but not spend a lot of money? I got you covered. With Quince, you're going to treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price. Something everyone needs in their closet, in my opinion. Quince's iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, guess what? They start at $50. Or if you really want to up your luxe factor, check out their Italian leather bags, washable silk skirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. It's because they partner directly with top factories and cut the costs of the middleman, passing the savings on to you. And also they work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel. You guys need to go get yourself the bodysuits. That's my new obsession. Look great with jeans or a skirt. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/KKC for 365-day returns, plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/KKC to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/KKC.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. Hope that you have had a great week, and I have such a great episode for you because there is a great new series on Max, ID Discovery and Max, called The Curious Case Of, which takes a deep dive into strange tales, bizarre cons, and twisted motives, exposing chilling truths that stretch the limits of imagination. If you like psychological thrillers, if you like true crime, this is so up your alley. And my guest in this episode is Beth Karas. So again, the series is called The Curious Case Of, and the first episode that you're going to be able to watch is completely going to hook you in, and here is why. Here's this crazy story. So Mary Louise Day was born in Little Falls, New York, February 19th, 1968. She's born to Charlotte Day and her husband, Charles. And she's got two younger sisters, Kathy and Sherry. Charlotte was neglectful, the mother, and she was unable to take care of them. So Kathy and Sherry were in and out of foster homes. While in foster care, Charlotte divorced Charles and she gets remarried to a man named William Howell. In 1975, Howell enlisted in the United States Army, and then Charlotte attained permanent and full custody of Mary and Kathy shortly after. But Sherry, she stayed behind in foster care. And in 1978, the family moved to Hawaii due to William's station. And by this time, Sherry had been legally adopted by one of her foster families. And so she was separated from her birth family. After that, two more children followed, Billie Jean and William Jr. In December of 1980, Mary, the oldest, was removed from Charlotte and William's care and taken into protective custody after it was discovered that the stepfather, William, was physically abusing her. So the family then moved to Seaside, California, following a change in William's base. But Mary was kept behind in Hawaii until a few months later when she was sent to live with the rest of the family in Seaside, California. So this is what we know. Around July 15th, 1981, Mary Louise Day disappears from her home in Seaside. But her parents don't report her missing, and almost no one aside from them even knew she was missing because she had just moved from Hawaii. In 1992, Sherry, the one who had been sent to foster care, she filed a missing persons report to the Fort Ord military base in California. But by then, 11 years had passed, so police didn't launch a full investigation. Sherry was sent a postcard that stated the police had done a record search and no information was found. She sent the information about Mary Day and a photo of her to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in late 1999. And at that point, they used age progression to show her as time was developed. And that age progression image depicted her at age 31. So when Sherry spoke to police regarding Mary's disappearance, they finally began an official investigation in 2002 because Fort Ord was being shut down and all cold cases were being reviewed. Her family, again, they were the only ones who knew about her disappearance. Their neighbors, again, were unable to even recall the family, let alone any pictures of Mary, who hadn't been enrolled in school while living in Seaside. So according to Kathy, one of the sisters, on the day that Mary disappeared, she and Mary stayed home while William, the stepfather, Charlotte, the mother, and the two other siblings went out to dinner. So when they returned, William's dog, of which he was super obsessed, began showing signs that he was sick, and William worried that he may even be dying. He became enraged and accused Mary, who had been left back at home, of poisoning the dog, and he began to beat her. Kathy said that her stepfather began to yell, scared her, shortly after which all hell broke loose. And she said she remembered that the fight between Mary and the stepfather had concluded with blood coming out of Mary's mouth. Well, the next morning, she said, Mary just disappeared from the house. And when she asked her mother, Charlotte, where she went, Charlotte said that she had run away and also to never speak about her ever again. So sometime later, the family moves to New York. Now, Sherry's 12 at the time. So Sherry, who had been adopted by another family, decides to visit with her birth family. And she notices that Mary is not with them. So she asks Charlotte, her birth mother, where's Mary? Charlotte again says Mary had run away, and she adds that she was on drugs and had become a prostitute. Again, please note that Mary was only 13 years old when she disappeared. Charlotte also said she'd burned all pictures of Mary that she had had, which, seems completely crazy. Sherry attempts to ask Kathy while spending the night about what happened to Mary. And Kathy says, listen, we're not allowed to talk about her. Don't bring her up at all. In addition to Kathy and Sherry, investigators were able to track down Charlotte and William eventually in Kansas. So this is years later. So they're interviewed by local police because the cold case has been reopened. So Charlotte reports she doesn't remember many of the facts regarding her daughter's disappearance. And that was the last time she saw Mary was in 1981 when she ran away. And she admitted that she and the stepfather, William, should have taken steps to locate Mary after her initial disappearance. She claimed that William had filed a runaway report with the Salinas Police Department. Guess what? There's no record of anyone ever reporting her missing prior to 1992, which was, of course, Sherry doing so. So Kathy tells investigators that shortly after Mary went missing, William, the stepfather, told the children to not go in a specific corner of the backyard. Don't even play there. You cannot play anywhere near that spot. So then, of course, investigators go back to the old home with her in 2003. She directs them to the corner. Cadaver dogs were brought in, and they did detect the scent of human remains in the area. But when the police dug up the spot, they uncovered only a small child's shoe. So on November 25th, 2003, a pickup truck is pulled over in Phoenix, Arizona at a routine traffic stop. This truck has stolen license plates. It's leading to the police to collecting and examining the identifications of the passengers. And one of the passengers was a woman whose Arizona state ID card bore the name Mary Louise Day. It also contained Mary's birth date and other pertinent information. So, of course, they're like, she did run away. Here she is in Phoenix, Arizona, all these years later. So the woman's detained, and when she's interviewed, she claimed that she ran away from her home to avoid abuse by Charlotte and William Howell. Investigators were skeptical as the credibility of her accounts because she had a thick Southern accent, something of which no one else in the family had. Mary Day did not have an accent. 13-year-old Mary Day did not have an accent. So would it seem likely that the woman that's pulled over all these years later, would have such a thick accent. Now, she's also got an inability to give a coherent, logical explanation of what really happened to her after she disappeared from the family in 1981. She also didn't know the family dog's name, which seemed a little bit strange. Kathy did not believe Mary since she didn't seem to remember most of those details. Well, Sherry invites her to stay with her in North Carolina and notices that Mary exhibits bizarre behaviors that led Sherry to theorize that she had multiple personality disorder. So eventually, she makes her leave. Mary from Phoenix, eventually marries someone else and moves to another state. Now, here's where it's a little bit strange, because in 2017, Mary's health is failing, and Judy Velaz then becomes the acting chief of the Seaside Police Department. So she begins to look at the case. She told 48 Hours, another show, that she had traveled to Mary's home in Missouri, where she had ended up living, to speak to her. And she says that Mary told her that she had run away and she stayed with a woman by the name of Maury Kimmel. And Maury Kimmel says that Mary won her heart and she took care of her for a year before she eventually ran away again. So Maury's claiming, I took in this young girl, she was wonderful, and she stayed with me for a year, but then she ran away again. So Judy Velaz continues to track down details of Mary's life after vanishing, and one of Maury Kimmel's relatives had a photo that would help turn the case around. It was a photo of Mary taken at least a year after the alleged murder, seen in the middle of this picture. So with the photo, Judy Velaz submits a report and they close the Mary Day investigation for good, right? Except there were still the inconsistencies with the stories, the Southern accent. And also, if you asked Phoenix Mary Day to write down her birth date, she would write down a birth date that was 2 years before Mary's birth date. Well, they do a DNA test just to check, like, is this somebody that, could possibly be related to Charlotte Day? And it actually was a match. Because investigators are theorizing that the woman was an imposter, and so they take DNA samples in order to determine whether or not her claim was true. And her DNA was compared to that of Charlotte. So she was a biological child of Charlotte's. So the investigation into Mary's disappearance, it's closed, and her sister Sherry has invited her to live in North Carolina, and she's still like, this doesn't make sense. So the question is Phoenix Mary the real Mary Day? Or did Charlotte have another baby? Maybe place her into someone else's home. She has her 2 years before Mary Louise Day. And then once she's being investigated, circles back and tried to convince that child to pretend that she was Mary Day. It is mind-bending. It is a crazy story. You guys are going to get so sucked into it. I felt like my hair was blown way back. And then the episode after that is The Curious Case of the Orphan Imposter, which is about Nicholas Rossi. I mean, he had a number of aliases, a sex offender who faked his own death in 2020. And you're probably familiar because that story became part of mainstream news as well. So in this episode, I interview Beth Karas. She is host of this series. Now, you probably remember her from The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. She was also interviewed extensively about that with her legal commentary. So for more than 2 decades, Beth has offered insight analysis and on-the-spot reporting on legal stories across the country. She worked for 8 years as an assistant DA in New York City and then joined Court TV in the network's 3rd year on the air. During her 19 years as an on-air correspondent at Court TV, which they later called In Session on True TV, she covered many high-profile cases, including Casey Anthony, Jodi Arias, Drew Peterson, Phil Spector, many of them. So I had a great time talking to her about this baffling story of Mary Louise Day, a little bit about Nicholas Rossi, and about some of the other big cases that she has worked on. Again, the series is called The Curious Case of ID Discovery and Max. It's a mind-bending one. Here's my interview with Beth. This episode is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing so your money is the chance to grow for you, your kids, and your retirement. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can start with $5 or even just your spare change, and you don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. Head to acorns.com/KKC or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Paid non-client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC and SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/KKC. Post-holiday, sugar crash is real. And parents, let's be honest, finding snacks that satisfy your kids and don't leave them bouncing off the walls isn't exactly easy. That's why I use Thrive Market. They make it simple to find healthier, kid-approved swaps for all of those sugary, junk-filled favorites. And the best part, they've got a healthy swap scanner in the Thrive Market app. It's a total game changer. You scan a product that your kids love, like their favorite chips or crackers, and the app shows a cleaner, healthier alternative. So my kids love Takis. I got them late July Hawaiian habanero chips. Thrive Market also takes the guesswork out of finding safe, healthy food. All of their products are 100% non-GMO and free from over 1,000 harmful ingredients. Plus, their on-site filters make it easy to shop by your family's dietary needs. For example, I eat gluten-free. The best part, everything gets delivered straight to your door, so you don't have to take that stress of searching grocery aisles or reading tiny ingredient lists. Ready for a junk-free start to 2025? Head to thrivemarket.com/Kate Casey and get 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/Kate Casey. thrivemarket.com/Kate Casey. Beth, I cannot believe my great fortune that I am talking to you. I have followed you for so long. You have been involved in so many big time cases too. It's almost like I feel like I'm seeing an old friend. Welcome to the show.
Well, it is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I have been around a long time. I started covering cases in 1994 for Court TV when it was 3 years old. And I did that for 19 years. And then I moved into what I do now. I always stayed on television because I always got booked. When cases I covered got revisited. The networks or one of the shows would say, well, we're doing a Scott Peterson story or Casey Anthony or Jodi Arias or Conrad Murray or whatever. Barry Sandusky. And so I would always stayed around. But Investigation Discovery has really done me a solid now. I love working with those guys.
Well, of all those cases that you worked on, is there one in particular where you look at the case through a different lens now with time?
It wasn't a case I covered, the Menendez brothers, but I do feel at the time, I felt that it was an abuse excuse and that they deserved the punishment they got. And I look at that through a different lens now. But they were convicted, or no, it was a hung jury, the first trial, when I was still an assistant DA. So I was still I wasn't a journalist yet. Their second trial came right after OJ's acquittal. And there was no camera. So Court TV, I think we had a producer there, but we weren't really following it day to day. And I was in Michigan at the time OJ was acquitted. But the Menendez brothers were tried like days, 2 weeks after or so. And that didn't bode well for them because, the judge just cut a lot of the evidence out that was introduced at the first trial, right? And the second trial was very different. But I didn't lose any sleep over the conviction and their sentence. And today, I've watched the movies, I watched the doc, I read the book. And I was like, I think they've done enough time.
Me too. I agree.
35 murderers get out in 25 in New York. They can't, right? I mean, of course, there were double murderers, but it seems like there's good evidence that the sexual abuse was not an excuse, that it was very real.
Now, conversely, you've seen all of these cases that have kind of blown up. Is there any case that you're surprised didn't get the attention that it deserved? I'm sure there are many, but one in particular.
2002, there was a trial. It got coverage, but it wasn't huge. There was a murder of a little girl who was kidnapped out of her home in San Diego. That's just outside of the city. In Sabre Springs was the name of the community in San Diego County. She was kidnapped out of her home by a neighbor, 7 years old, dead asleep. And there was a huge hunt for her. She was found in the desert dead 3 weeks later. That case, and then that guy's on death row. His name is David Westerfield. David Westerfield. That I never saw a trial move so fast. The murder happened in February, if I recall, 2002. And he was convicted later that year, and he was sentenced like in January 2003. It was all inside of 12 months. Commission of the crime, the trial, the conviction and sentencing. And I thought it was very fast. In fact, that was the defense strategy, was to move the case to trial fast because there was so much forensic testing. There was no confession. It was all fibers and blood, and he did it. There's no question about it. They had offered him a life sentence. He would just tell them where her body was. And then he was about to take the deal. And her body is found by one of the community groups out searching. So they knew they had the right guy, but it was a question. The jury couldn't know that. Right. And so they were still getting forensic testing results. The prosecution was in the middle. They were about to wrap their case in chief. And they were still getting results from the labs. They were moving as fast as they could, but he still got convicted. Anyway, that case got attention in that community and court TV watchers, but it wasn't huge. And I thought, wow, if a child isn't safe in her own bed.
Do we think that maybe he committed other crimes?
The guy had 3 medical patents, college educated, 3 medical patents for devices, for like knees or something. I don't know. That stayed with me. And then right during the middle of that trial, a little girl named Samantha Runyon, she was kidnapped from her father by someone. That was in the middle of the case. And I thought, oh my God. And that was Riverside County. And I thought, oh, there might be a mistrial if jurors are aware of that. Or, the defense I think the defense might have said, Judge, we need to at least question the jurors because it's, similar facts. Child, she was 5. I think the Runyon child was 5. Danielle was 7. Anyway, those cases, they stay with me.
I would assume. Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about the genesis of this series, because you quickly get sucked in these episodes, I got to say.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that. There have only been 2 so far as we are recording this, but I'm happy to hear that. This was a spinoff of the Natalia Gray series, which I was sort of cast in as the voice to kind of help the viewer understand this crazy story. It had a lot of legal in it, but it wasn't only legal, but it's just trying to, who's the competent, reliable storyteller here, right? That's Natalia Gray. And we did not think we were going to get 3 seasons out of this, but we did. And it was a successful series. There's an appetite for stories that involve crime that are not murders, right? They're still interesting and wacky. And we thought, well, let's see if we can find some twisted stories where you really don't know sometimes what the truth is or who really to believe. It's almost putting yourself in the seat of a juror, right? Because that's what jurors do. There's like 2 sides, right? The prosecution presents their side. The defense never has to put on evidence. And if they have some evidence, good. They can't manufacture it. But if they have something to put on, good. Otherwise, they put on their case through cross-examination and their own sort of spin or interpretation of the prosecution's evidence. So there's 2 ways to interpret or 2 different sets of facts. I don't know. But jurors have to deal with this. And that's their job. Like, which one what's the truth? Which one do we believe? What's more credible? And that's kind of what Natalia Grace did to us as viewers. We were kind of like jurors saying, who do we believe? You're using the same skills you have to use as a juror. And you have to do that in some of these stories too. I mean, do you think Phoenix Mary is the real Mary Day who disappeared?
I don't.
Well, let me tell you. The cadaver dogs, 10 years later, after she disappeared in Seaside, the cadaver dogs hit on a Fort Ord, which is where William Hoole, her stepfather, the one
that's where they moved after Seaside, right?
Yes, they moved to Fort Ord. And Fort Ord, this is years later, they were turning the fort back to Seaside. And before it was developed, they actually, there had been a murder victim found on the property, completely unrelated. And they're like, oh my God, we can't have developers come in here if there are any other crimes around here. We better bring in some dogs and just make sure that the dogs, that there's no other like bodies here before we completely contaminate or destroy a potential crime scene. So they do. And these dogs, they hit on another location on Fort Ord. And when investigators looked to see who lived there, the Hools, they had moved from Seaside to this house on Fort Ord, and dogs hit there. And what are the chances that dogs are going to hit on two places where the Hools left? There was a body buried in both of these places. The question
is, possible that the body was first buried in Seaside, he dug it up later when they moved to Fort Ord, and
Correct.
then they dumped it in Utah.
Correct. That would be the theory. So that's a little more evidence. And also, the law enforcement consulted with a linguist about Phoenix Mary's accent.
Yeah, the accent. It was very specific, right? Very unique, I should say.
Correct. And, in some of these forensic areas like handwriting, or people say it's a little more art than science. But this linguist said that accent is not something you acquire later in life. That is a type of accent that is sort of ingrained in you when you are young, not when you disappear at 12 or 13 and live somewhere else and then develop it. It's not that, and so he's like, it's not consistent with, the woman who disappeared. That was there. I mean, law enforcement is split, right? You saw some of these retired, guys who are like, they just don't believe it, but yet the DNA. I mean, she's definitely Charlotte's daughter. And Charles Day, the father of Mary Day, was already passed away. But police were able to track down some of his siblings. So they got DNA from the siblings. Not as, it's not as, as sensitive as like his own DNA, but it was consistent with.
So that would have been her first cousin. That would have been somewhere between possibly like a 9 to 12% DNA match, correct?
I don't know the percentage, but it was like consistent. Like she's probably is a child of Charlotte and Charles. But there is a neighbor that Charlotte had who remembers her with a baby stroller. Between two children, like Mary was next. So she might actually have had another child that she gave up. And as you heard Sherry say, that's the half sister with the beautiful red curly hair. Sherry has said, my mom, she had children. She was very promiscuous. She would, if she gave one up, she stayed in touch with that child. So there's a theory that Phoenix Mary,
I think they kept in touch.
One of her children, she kept in touch. And because it was just months after Charlotte and William Hoole were interviewed by law enforcement under suspicion of being responsible for Mary's death. They almost got arrested for murder, or Charles at least. I mean, William at least almost got arrested for murder. And just months after that, all of a sudden, Mary shows up.
Now, she also shows signs of schizophrenia. So is it possible she adopted that crazy accent because it's like one of her personalities?
I suppose it is possible. And I won't rule that out either, but I want to give a lot of credence to the family who they're very suspicious. They just don't believe. Like Sherry doesn't believe that's her sister, but, and she was very happy, with the episode because she felt it at least portrayed her position accurately. They have not been happy with the way some other storytellers have told their story. They keep coming out like with a definite answer that missing Mary was Phoenix Mary.
Well, also it's like haunting, the idea of this imposter staying in your home with your things. That's what tugged at me, like the feeling of like, just being so unsafe in your own home.
Right. Or if it is your sister, you don't know her. She is a stranger. You really haven't lived with her ever, except for the early years, because Sherry ended up living with another family, her foster family, right? They adopted her. And if Mary became schizophrenic, I mean, yeah, that's just too much to handle. That it was when she said she had the beer bottle thrown at her and crazy. Yeah.
And the multiple personalities. Monica is this way, but, Mary's this way.
Right.
So where do you think the schizophrenia could have come from? The Charlotte or the father?
Well, she had so much trauma in her childhood that, I think you can have maybe a genetic predisposition to schizophrenia, but it's the environmental factors that will actually manifest it and bring it out. But I'm not an expert on this. But I think that just because her childhood was so messed up, I mean, she was abused a lot. So, I'm not surprised if she, became schizophrenic, if that's true. But, another thing I heard is that not long before she died, it seemed like she wanted to say something about her identity. And then she died. So I don't know, was she going to say, well, I am actually a child of theirs, but I'm not Mary. And they coached me, William and Charlotte coached me on what to say. I don't know. But the photo.
Yeah, let's talk about the photo, because that is nutty too.
The photo, which is produced by the family that adopted her about 2 years after Mary goes missing. That's Mary, supposedly Mary in the photo. It's pretty similar looking. It sure doesn't, but it was never forensically examined by law enforcement. I mean, that new Seaside chief at the time said, okay, that's it, case closed. I mean, she looks just like her. That's it. So.
Do you think we'll ever get an answer to this? This is like such a mind-bending story.
Right. I don't know that we'll ever get any more. Unless Charlotte would talk. But I mean, you saw Sherry go visit Charlotte in a living home or something, and she's like buttoned up because you would think she would just sort of lay it out if she had nothing to hide. If she wasn't responsible or complicit in some way in Mary's death, then just say what happened. Okay, she was but we should have reported it to the police. Come on, this is a child who's bleeding, who's leaving home. She's running away from him. She's bleeding. And nobody reports her. She shows up with some family, and this family doesn't say, hey, we just took in a child. Nobody tries to find out who she is. It just doesn't make sense. But yet that photo is pretty, family.
You know what do you need me to do? You got to have me pretend I'm like an employee at the nursing home. Yeah, let me 15 minutes with her. I think I could get some stuff out. She's not going to tell Sherry, the daughter that's already got issues, right?
Right. Where I can't remember where that home is. Is it Colorado or is she in California? Because you should go.
I will go. Listen, I'll fall on the sword for everybody. I'll go. I'll do it. We can make this another episode. I'm very happy to do that.
Oh.
My new goal this year is hydration. My days get so busy, it's actually the one thing that I always forget to do. And I love Liquid IV. It is powered by Hydroscience, and it helps you break the mold. They've got great flavors, like my personal favorite, the Pina Colada. Think about how much you are working out. Are you refueling? How much did you actually drink to rehydrate? Liquid IV is leading the way in flavor innovation. They've got a ton of great flavors, including the sugar-free flavors like raspberry lemonade, white peach, and rainbow sherbet. You can break the mold and own your own ritual. Just one stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, and always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. Embrace your ritual with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code KateCasey at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today by using promo code KateCasey at liquidiv.com.
Behind those cozy nights at home, thousands of employees at BP go to work every day. People producing more U.S. natural gas. People building grid-scale solar capacity. People turning landfill waste gas into pipeline-quality renewable natural gas. And people delivering all of that power where it's needed. They're part of the more than 300,000 jobs BP supports across the country. Learn more at bp.com/investing in America.
Well, let's talk about Nicholas Rossi.
Oh, Nicholas Rossi. That's one of his names. That's the name he's indicted under. But I was emailing with him in a Utah jail.
Wow.
And he insisted I call him Arthur Brown. So while he's in the jail system as Nicholas Rossi, and he gets his, you get email, you're not on internet, but there's a system where you can,
get emails.
And communicate. And I'd have to say, Dear Arthur. And even he'd want that in court too. And he's got 2 cases, 2 rape cases in Utah, 2 different counties. And he's got a public defender. And his lawyer stood up in one of the hearings and said, Your Honor, we stipulate that Arthur, my client is Nicholas Rossi. That became a whole big deal. Okay, so this is what's coming up. I shouldn't be telling too much of the story. It's coming up. So this is a guy who's a sexual predator in the United States, right? He faked his own death. He fled to the UK and ended up in Scotland, married a woman there, took on a new identity. And these rape kits in Utah were just collecting dust. And during the pandemic, a very good prosecutor said, let's dust these off and test them. And he got a hit on Nick Rossi, who was already a registered sex offender because of an incident in Ohio. And they tracked him down in a hospital in Edinburgh because he was in for COVID. He had COVID and he was like on a respirator. He was not doing well. And he was identified not initially by DNA. He was identified by other characteristics, including a very distinctive tattoo, which at one point he claimed that the tattoo was put on him while he was in a coma in the hospital. It's an incredible story. He hasn't gone to trial yet. So these cases are pending, but the backstory is incredible. And the now retired prosecutor we have in the show telling this story. And it's just it's so compelling and twisted because he's got his own personal story about how Nick Rossi, Arthur Brown went after him, the prosecutor.
Well, how many cases are going to be featured in this series?
6.
All these cases, which is the one that you get the most fired up about?
Probably the one coming up on Monday. The one we're just talking about, Nick Rossi. Yeah. I mean, I was really entrenched in that one in terms of like research and following it. But the cat cult is a really interesting story too. And Jody Hildebrandt, I mean, they're all good
Jody
stories.
Hildebrandt, that's another one. What a doozy.
Yeah, I mean, that story's out there, but we have a different angle because we have one of the men from the church that Jody Hildebrandt was, giving it therapy too. Like she was really dividing families.
Which was interesting because a lot of the clients were women. So
she was teaching them.
So did she convince this husband to isolate himself from his wife because she was interested in the wife?
Well, she convinced him that he basically was like a sexual pervert because maybe he had sexual,
fetishes or
whatever. That's just normal stuff. Like masturbation is not unusual.
Right. But belittled him, shamed him.
She really manipulated men and women and manipulated marriages. And she's supposed to work to keep the marriages together. And she was actually breaking them up.
It's like a cult leader.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with telling, helping women who may feel a little bit smothered or they don't have enough freedom in the relationship they're in to, help them get a little more independence. And that's fine. If some of these women felt that way, some women like the lifestyle they're living in. I don't pass judgment on anybody, whatever they choose to do. But if a woman is actually being abused and is being controlled and being cut off from her family, I mean, that's not a healthy environment. But that's not really what was happening in a lot of these families.
No.
So,
wow. Did you read the Sherry Frankie memoir? I just read it. It's really quite eye-opening. But she goes into Jody. Like, she talks about what she was witness to.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
I recommend it.
Okay, I will check it out. I did write to them, both of them, Jody and Ruby, in prison. I tried to connect with everybody, but they wouldn't talk to me. It was just Nick Rossi. Yeah, he was a little. Yeah. He's a little. He wanted more to talk to me, but
I'm sure I was going to say he probably would love to talk to you every day.
He was like, I want to get a book deal, and I want. It's like, come on.
Isn't it crazy how all of them are in prison? They want book deals. They want reality shows. I guess it's par for the course.
I got to bone up on the Son of Sam laws, which I know were a big deal way back when, where it means you cannot profit from your crime. Or like if OJ was going to write the book, if I did it, it went to the Goldman family, any money. So, but I think a lot of states have watered it down watered down the law because they say, it kind of infringes on your First Amendment rights. But
no, like somebody would be in a halfway house and they're making deals with like a streaming network. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Last question I have for you is the Natalia Grace story. Is that still mind-bending to you? I mean, you've covered it for quite some time. Does it continue to kind of unravel? Are you fascinated by it? Or do you feel like you've kind of got a hold of like what all the players and what happened?
So I think the story's pretty much told, but I don't think it's over. I think that there will be more from Natalia because, until she gets the therapy she needs, and I understand she is getting treatment. I believe she's getting therapy. I know she's going to get some medical treatment. She's in a good place now. But her life has just been upside down until now. And she's 20, she'll be 20. She was born in 2000. She's 21 now. She'll be 22 in September. She needs some education. She's bright. No question that she's very bright. But when I look back at the story, I cannot believe what happened in Indiana. The re-aging of her, I can't get that out of my head. I mean, I can understand a couple of years because apparently this happens with international adoptions. And, if maybe the paperwork isn't all there, whatever, or get re-aged. But 14 years, and she had a disability. She wasn't. I'm not saying being a little person is a disability. She had a disability on top of that because it's a type of dwarfism that she had where she needed this. And she's in pain. And she was dropped into an apartment that was not modified for a little person. And she's 9 years old. And she's expected to live on her own. You think about your children when they were 9 years old. Could they have fed themselves? Did they know anything about hygiene or washing their own clothes or whatever? She sat on the couch and ate like packaged food that people brought. I mean, it's like, I cannot believe this happened in plain sight. So that I will never get over. Yeah. And you know what? You saw it if you watched the season 3, where one of the DePauls, I think, was quoting Homeland Security when they were getting Natalia her passport to go to the UK and visit her boyfriend, Neil. Homeland Security is like, I don't know what you people in Indiana were doing, but this person was born in 2003, not 1989. We have her birth certificate, and that's what her passport's going to say. And they set the record straight. Like, what you're doing over there? And that judge didn't hold a hearing where he heard from Natalia or a guardian ad litem for Natalia. She didn't even know it, that she was re-aged. That really bothered me.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a case that people continue to talk about. So I'm sure you get asked about it all the time. Or people on the street wait, I have to talk to you about Natalia Grace.
Oh, I go to a Pilates class a couple times a week, not far from where I live. And I see a lot of the same faces, but there's several classes, right? Every hour is with the same instructor. So I see, every few weeks, a lot of the same women, and they always ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the instructor too.
You're like mid-exercise. Yeah.
Now they're asking me about Curious Case of. So they're following the shows.
Well, I think the one about Mary Day in particular, people are going to bug you about for a long time. I hope that when it airs that we get some sort of answer. I feel like there's going to be somebody out there that knows something and we're going to get something out of it.
I hope so. I mean, Mary's passed away. Charles Day's passed away. And Charlotte and William Hoole are getting up there. But we need some answers.
We need some answers.
Cadaver dogs in 2 places, the little shoe, a belt buckle. And William Hoole had told Kathy, the sister, not to play in that area of the yard.
That's right. Yeah, don't go back there. I mean, yikes. Well, what else do you have going on? So you have got this series. What else can do? Well, first of all, where can people watch the series? And then where can people follow you to get caught up on all that you have going on?
So the series airs on Investigation Discovery every Monday night. I mean, this, again, we are talking on a Thursday, but episode 3 will be at 11 p.m. on Investigation Discovery, and then it will stream on Max. the next day. So all of the episodes are on Max, and I don't know their repeat schedule on Investigation Discovery as I speak to you now. And I'm on just my name. I'm on Twitter, X at Beth Karas, and Facebook at Beth Karas. And then Instagram is Beth Karas with the number 1. I just joined Blue Sky, but I haven't posted yet. But,
well, you got a lot going on. We'll give you a break. You got to come back and talk about other cases.
Oh, anytime. If you want to just talk about like Scott Peterson or something. Oh, that one. Yeah. I will tell you, I'm working on a podcast for iHeartRadio right now. And I have a podcast. Season 1 is Unrestorable. I'm a co-host. It's about 2 children who were allegedly murdered by their mother, but she never went to trial because she was found incompetent to stand trial. It's called Unrestorable, and season 2 is we're working on now, and it's about the only woman on Tennessee's death row sentenced to death when she was 18, and she's 48 now. She's, she could be heading for execution. So it's sort of her story, and what is justice, So, because there were in the modern era there were 8 18-year-olds in Tennessee sentenced to death. 7 were men.
Wow.
Boys, and one was this woman, Krista Pike. And the 7 males who were 18 in the same era, in the 80s, she was convicted in 96, they've all had their sentences vacated. So.
Wow.
So that's why I was saying, like, what is justice here? Like, what do you anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank my great guest, Beth Karas, and remind you to click subscribe. Please leave a 5-star review. When you get to the review part, like on Apple Podcasts, and you pull up my show, just keep scrolling down, and then you will see the 5-star option. If you could leave the 5-star and the reviews, that is so helpful for Podmetrics, and it's so appreciated. Also, please join the Facebook group Reality Life with Kate Casey. You can get my must-watch list every week of what to watch in unscripted TV by going to katecasey.substack.com. Bonus episodes on Patreon by going to patreon.com/KateCasey. And please follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at KateCaseyCA, TikTok, it's Kate Casey, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at Kate Casey. And check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.
And now, a next-level moment from AT&T Business. Say you've sent out a gigantic shipment of pillows, and they need to be there in time for International Sleep Day. You've got AT&T 5G, so you're fully confident. But the vendor isn't responding, and International Sleep Day is tomorrow. Luckily, AT&T 5G lets you deal with any issues with ease, so the pillows will get delivered and everyone can sleep soundly, especially you. AT&T 5G requires a compatible plan and device. Coverage not available everywhere. Learn more at att.com/5G network.